Call the meeting to order. Begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I. It's Wednesday, May 2nd. Finance Committee does have a quorum this evening, and we will be reviewing the special town meeting articles and the annuals as well. And I guess we'll start. Mike?
We could just skip to the special first, Article 2. We could have a motion to revote that, because I believe at the last meeting it was voted as raise and appropriate. It should be from free cash, because we can't raise and appropriate after we already set the tax rate. So
Okay.
if it was in the annual, we could.
Shannon, make a motion to
That was Article 2. And it was
Second.
Okay. Is there further discussion on revoting? All those, hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous?
Mr. Chairman,
You said 7, I meant 2.
Two.
Yeah.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
you meant. It was implied.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mike?
I move you recommend Article 2, the amount of $7,900 to come from free cash.
Okay.
second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, opposed? Passes.
And you also were provided with the draft recommendations for the special, so if you can review those and let me know if everything's okay with that, Rick. You can get back to me tomorrow on that.
Yep.
If anyone has any issues, just let Rick know.
Okay.
Then on the annual, we're almost there with Article 4. The engineers promised me tonight I'd have the information that we need on that, but we don't have it now. Article 5 is the feasibility study for the town hall, and the building committee has recommended for the town hall feasibility study, $135,000. This would cover the feasibility study for the town hall as well as engineering costs. If we look at one of the possibilities, right now the plan is to build a town hall behind this building and rip this building down. But I don't know if I talked to you before about the other option of the Elm Street property, where the Reed and Barton factory is, that we're always concerned about. You know, becoming a liability at some point. The company declared bankruptcy and just abandoned the property. And we met with DEP, who has $300,000 to do asbestos abatement, and Mass Development has offered $600,000 to do some cleanup. And the EPA has said that if there is any on-site in the soil, that they'll take care of that. But if they do, then the town has to hold on to the property. We can't sell it. And so we have environmental engineers that we've used on our landfill and some other properties in town. And as part of this, they'd be reviewing any information that comes from EPA and DEP this summer to, right now they've said they don't, there's test site wells on the site right now that EPA has put on and DEP's put in, and they're not getting any significant hits, so it might not be that bad, the property. And if they can do the environmental cleanup, and then we can have that building torn down, we could build both the senior center and a town hall on that property, and then have a park behind the buildings along the water there. So that's a possibility as one of the sites for the town hall, an alternative to this site here, if possible.
Okay. Yes, Paul?
This is all interesting. I'm just a little reluctant to get into design and other aspects, engineering and designs of a new town hall, until you have a site that you know you want.
Right, we're not doing any design now, it's just a feasibility study.
Okay, because the article talks about the cost of engineering and design of a new town hall.
Yeah, it's, right, this phase is just the feasibility study. When we set the 1.5 million aside, we didn't think we'd have to be going through any of these steps. We thought we'd do a feasibility study, find out what it's gonna cost, then go back when we're ready, and let the town know what the cost of a new town hall will be, what the cost of a senior center would be, and then move on to design.
But even then, the feasibility, if it involves cost, involves site. And if you know, if you're gonna put it back here, as opposed to over there, you've got two totally different sites with two different wet plans and everything else. And we know from experience what happens with site alterations, whether we make them or somebody else makes them for us. I'm just very leery about authorizing any sum of money to be expended now until we get some better sense of really where we want to put this thing. Then we can do a feasibility study for that site and a design for that site. That's fine. I'm very leery about things which you do and then you change your site or you change this.
You know, when everyone came in here for the meeting to discuss the RFQ, they were told that there's a possibility of this site and a possibility of that site. So,
Yeah, but
what? There's a possibility of two sites, so they've set their parameters on knowing that. And if we don't get any good information this summer on that, then it would be here. They can't start till after July anyways.
So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, would the 135 cover the costs of both sites?
Yes,
In total?
yeah.
That's, okay.
Aaron?
Would it cost 135 to do one site? A feasibility study for one site, or are we spending more because, as Paul says, we
We're-
haven't picked the site?
We're not spending it, we just need the authorization not to have it there.
what do you mean we're not spending?
We may not spend, the engineers we don't know if we're gonna use all the money that the engineers have set in their proposal, because we don't know how far it's gonna go.
A better way to phrase my question would be, is it more expensive to do a feasibility study that involves two sites than it would be to do a feasibility study that involves
No.
just one site?
Because I'll tell you on the next one, on the Council on Aging, the feasibility study is based on looking at the program of what they have right now, what their future program will be, what the senior population is projected to be in town, what we would need for the size building for a senior center, what we would need for parking, and then that way we know which site to look at.
Okay. Tom?
Do I understand, Mike, you're not gonna spend it until you decide which site,
Correct.
okay? Once you get, the only reason we're going through this gyration is we enabled the money to be put into an account. And then, all of a sudden, at town meeting, it got so convoluted that we didn't know whether we were on foot or on horseback, all right? So, that would have been done, the authorization for the feasibility would have been done in October,
Right.
at the October town meeting, when the $1.5 million was put into that special account, specifically for the new town hall and the senior center. But because of the way they screwed everything around, we had to wait and do it again. So if we wait and say, no, we're not gonna let them authorize it, then we have to now wait until October to do something,
Right.
all right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna spend the money. It's not like I'm gonna give him, he's not taking 35,000, going out and doing the study. They'll do the study after they find out where they're gonna put the property. Is that a fact?
Right.
And I think,
So, all right, just to nail what Tom
Yeah.
is saying. So, if this is authorized, it won't be used until you have decided on one of these two sites.
And if any money we don't use goes back into the $1.5
Well,
million.
that I understand, I just want to know, I'm talking about timing, because if you just, once you've decided on a site, and that this is the site we want,
Right.
then this makes sense to me.
Yep.
It makes no sense to me to be spending the money to do.
Right.
To do one on two
Right.
sites,
Right.
and when we don't even know if either of them are
Yeah.
really feasible.
Okay.
First thing we gotta find out is, are the sites feasible? If both of them are, then which one do you want? Because each one is gonna have its own conditions.
Yep.
And what we need to do then is do a feasibility and a design plan that fits that particular site. All of that I'm with. It's just, this, as it's written here, it doesn't say that. And that's what worries me.
Right, well, yeah, and I was just gonna make the point that because of how it's written, I think we need to either have someone get up and be very clear about
Yep.
that, or we run the risk of having the meeting hijacked like it was in October and having a whole bunch of rigmarole about, well, we don't wanna spend it, and then we're back to waiting until next fall town meeting.
I would hope that the motion as finally written would be a
Right.
lot more specific.
It will be.
On this,
The way we
Yeah.
move it,
on the way it's moved.
yeah,
Yeah.
That makes that
Yeah.
very clear.
yeah.
Well, if I remember in October.
I can't
there was
support
one
it as
set
it's written
for both
here.
buildings.
I could support it
They
as
split it.
as you're
Right, and then
presenting
we had
it
a split.
orally.
Yeah, and the reason, that's right, the reason we're going through the gyration of splitting it, it was going to be one feasibility
Right.
study,
Right.
okay? And then it got, like I said, it got all convoluted.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend Article 5, the amount of $135,000.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Okay. Yes, Paul.
I can't vote for this now only because I have to vote on the basis of what's written here. I can't accept what's
Why
written
don't we-
here
yeah.
as being right. So go ahead and have the vote. If it passes, it
Let's-
passes. But I can't support it in this form. I need to see, bring in the motion. The motion can certainly be drawn out of this. You don't have to, within the scope. You certainly can make a motion with this.
Yeah, well, I would say that, but when you do an article for a project, a sewer project, it says that the selectmen can borrow, the selectmen can raise and appropriate, the selectmen can, and then that's all taken care of in the motion. You don't have the motion when you vote that, and it's the same here. Our motion will have for engineering and feasibility study.
I understand, I think you run the risk of it failing at town meeting and completely derailing the conversation in the meantime.
Yes, Mike?
I think, as long as we're, explain what it is, and the motion is what really is being moved. The article as written would be one thing, but if the motion is made to specifically say all those things and cover all those bases, then I think that would solve that problem.
Yeah, I just.
I maybe want to see the motion ahead of
We
time.
haven't seen it yet.
And-
Well,
Well, we make the motion.
Right,
Yeah, but somebody else writes it for us.
Yeah, but I know, but
But
yeah,
we-
that's now, but
Right.
it used to be, we used to write our
Oh,
own.
God
right?
knows, you and I
We
wrote
wrote our own
motions.
motions.
Yeah, we didn't.
We make the motion the way we want it to be presented, that this thing is
Yeah.
going to happen only if, in fact, we have decided where we're gonna put it.
Right.
so we can,
Clean.
Mr. Chairman.
yes, Mike.
I mean, we can write, it just has to go through legal.
That's what I said.
Right.
Right.
We can do
That's
it.
not-
As long as
that's
it
not illegal.
passes.
That still meets it. All we're saying is,
That's
and I think
right.
all Paul's saying is he wants to be sure that we know where we're gonna put it.
Yeah,
And we're not gonna,
and then do the study and the
have to know
design and
where it is,
everything in relation
where we're
to
gonna put
that.
it.
That makes sense to me. If I were coming into town meeting to vote, that would make sense. This doesn't.
So we can make the motion on the 14th. Right?
Well.
And spell it out.
We haven't been drafting our motions the last number of years.
Yeah.
For years, we
did them.
We
have
drafted
to-
them, and only if we had a question do we ask legal counsel. Otherwise, we did it. The selectman's office, selectman's secretary didn't do it. We did it. The chair did it. Drew up the motions. But That's long since gone and probably a good thing.
And just another caution, you know, if we say, our feasibility study, the person could be looking at the sites and say, you can do it so much cheaper here than you can there. So they may be looking at the two sites to determine which site we can build the building cheaper on. So I would think, you know, when we do the motion, it would simply say the costs of engineering for a feasibility study. I mean, we take out design, but I mean, technically they would be doing some sketches that you could consider a design. It's not a full architectural design, which would be in the motion, you know.
So you say strike the word design.
In the motion.
Yeah,
Okay,
In the motion,
Yeah.
you can't touch the warrant.
yeah,
You can't touch
Right.
the warrant, no. the
so,
warrant
but
is
on the
the warrant.
14th, okay.
Well, do we though? Because that money was set aside, like that portion of the sentence is referring to the money that was set aside at the meeting
1.5.
for engineering and design. That's what it was set aside
Right.
for, right?
Coming right out of that money, yeah.
Right out.
it's, that money was set aside.
Engineering and design, so.
And it
And
specifies
construction.
for feasibility study.
Yeah,
That's what it's saying.
yeah.
Right.
Oh, for a feasibility study, yeah. Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
yes,
And Mike, this is just for the town hall, because I had
Right.
heard that, you know, town hall, senior center was gonna be combined, so how can you do one without the other?
No, this is just the town hall.
Article 6 is the senior center.
Yep.
Yeah, there's another article for that.
Article 6.
Had the motion.
Yeah,
Had
we
the
had the
second.
motion.
Yeah, we have the
Okay.
second.
Any final discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Article 5. Opposed? 1. Okay, motion
The
passes.
second article is 65,000 for a feasibility study for Council on Aging. It would be the same thing, engineering and feasibility study for a Council on Aging. And as I said, what they'll be doing is looking at the needs of the seniors, how they see the population growing, what size building, and we did tell them we'd want the building also to include the cupboard of kindness. So they'd need to tell us what size building we're gonna need, how much parking we're gonna need, what outside amenities the seniors may say that they want, as far as Tom wants to play bocce, have to put a bocce court.
If this gets built, Tom won't be able to be.
All right. Okay. Any final questions? Okay. Yes, Mike,
I move we recommend Article 6, the amount of $65,000.
is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Yes, Paul?
Only to note that I will vote against this for exactly the same arguments that I made.
Final discussion, hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay,
The other articles, I provided you with information today on the school window and door project. And it's a spreadsheet from our financial advisors. So the first, there'd be temporary borrowing like there was on the high school project. And once that project is finished and we know what the MSBA reimbursement is, the town would have to go out and bond the remainder of the project. What this is based on is $4 million. So as you can see, the first couple years, it's small because it's the temporary borrowing, 110,000 and 130,000. Then it increases to 420,000 in 2022, and then it goes down to 409, 398, 387. So on average, you're looking at $350,000 a year. And the school department presented this to the building committee last night for the 3 elementary schools. So I don't know whether there's any possibility of doing 2 of the schools instead of 3 of the schools to reduce the cost. And also in the future, as the population continues to decline, the possibility of closing a school. Because once we take MSBA money, if we go to do anything else with a school building other than a school, then we have to pay back whatever was appropriated for that school. So if this, and the superintendent, the discussion also was asked of him last night whether a debt exclusion would be a possibility, and his response was that the timing is off. There wouldn't be enough time to have a town meeting, schedule a town election, and still get this money this year from the MSBA. So,
If we do the project, then it has to be a school. What's that time frame? Like you can't.
How long is the look back?
20 until...
20 years?
Yeah.
I guess the upside, I'm sorry, Paul.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only upside, I mean, I think the reimbursement's almost 56%.
Right.
Project. That's a pretty good number.
What they're scheduled for now is 55.63. So reimbursement of $5,508,763 on, what's the term they always used? MSBA allowable costs.
Yes, Paul?
Yeah, the other thing that I think at least weighs with me is that this project also involves windows that have far greater protection against gunshots and other things. Now, this is a terrible thing to be saying. We keep thinking this couldn't possibly happen in Norton. We know from what's been happening in this country that it can happen in any town, in any community, at any time, for any reason. This isn't going to stop that necessarily, but it might prevent some things. And all I know is that I would, being on this committee, if I voted against this, and then something happened where if we'd had these windows, might made a difference, I would have great difficulty living with myself for the few years I've got left. Honestly, it just seems that this is being imposed upon us, in a sense, by the conditions that are going on nationally. But I think we need to take whatever, that's why I asked that question about whether we were getting all the stuff in the high school, which we are now. We finally have bought the that we put the wiring in for. I mean, we can't do everything, but this seems to me to make a lot of sense to have those windows, particularly on the first floors and so forth, made of this other stuff. And we need to have the windows. It isn't that the windows need to be replaced under any circumstances. So I know this is a big item, but I just think there are compelling reasons beyond just the windows are down and we need to replace them. There's more to it than that.
Mike?
What runoff do we have for existing bonds that would overlap with this?
Nothing that will overlap it. The only thing you have coming off in 2019, $107,000 for the police station building project, and in 2021, $5,000 for the Winnicott sewer project. In 2023 is the last payment, $30,000 for the land acquisition on Mansfield Ave. In 2024, $110,000 for the school renovations, building remodeling, school renovations. I'm not sure which project that was. And then you don't have anything come off until 2028. You have,
My 8-year-old graduates from high school.
or 2027, 25,000 for the landfill cap.
Okay.
And in the meantime, you've added Camp Edith Reed. I mean, my only concern is if we go forward with this project, I don't want to be standing here in 2022 and someone saying, well, how come we don't have enough money for the school budget? Well, because we got to pay a payment of $420,000 this year. You can't, just so people know that, it's going to have to come out, so.
Tom,
Is there any way that after we approve something, we can then get at that exclusion?
That's a good question. I'll ask the financial advisor that tomorrow. If we do, can we do the temporary?
And then go for the debt exclusion
Yeah.
on the principal, the big. The only reason I say that is, like Paul, I think it has to get done. My concern is, as you also alluded to, is that if we put, let's say, $1 million into the Yale School and we decide 5 years down the road, we don't really want the Yale School anymore, then we gotta come up with the 55% of the 5 million, whatever they're putting into it, and give it back.
The Yale's 3.9 million.
That's pretty close. So 3.9, we have to give back 55% of that. You know, that would really, that's, you know, I'm sure they did some kind of a long-range thing. I know we asked them how long these windows and that would last, but I was just wondering, how long will the school be open? More than how long will
Yeah.
the windows long outlast the school?
So,
So if you want, I'll get that answer for Tom and bring it back next week.
yeah. So I mean, really, in 2022 is when the big number hits.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah,
know,
if, you know, if we can find out about the debt exclusion, then I
Yeah.
think the school committee also should be looking very seriously, long range out in the future, like the next 5 years. Are all schools gonna be, all schools we're gonna update gonna be necessary?
Chairman.
yes,
So, kind of along that line, are there any 40Bs or any other type developments that are, you know, this close to coming on board, where you're gonna get a ramp up in the population, so that in 5-6 years, you can kind of project more kids in the school? Or conversely, has the school done any type of long range, where's the population going?
We have some 40Bs that are approved that nothing has happened with, you know, if an Island Brook, I think, is either approved or almost approved, that's just up the street here. I'm not sure how many houses going to be in there, but that's going to be houses. And the other one, the Turtle Crossing that they always talk about down on Newland, would put us over the top and would be at our 10% if that was
Yep.
built. So we wouldn't have to worry about that anymore.
The only thing I can add to this is that before the recession started, I would get calls. I happened to have, there was a big hunk of land, 19 acres, that went with my barn. I live in a renovated barn. Just went with the property. And I kept getting calls, unsolicited, everything else, you know. Were you interested in selling it? Blah, 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 blah. With the advent of the recession, that stopped dead. This spring, it started again. This spring, I'm getting cold calls from people just saying, we'd be very interested in paying you top price for you know, you can have plenty of land for your house and we would be interested in buying the rest of it. I say that only because I think it says, if other people are having the same thing happen to them, it says something about what's happening in the market today in terms not just of existing houses, but people back interested in buying land to put in streets and developments.
Right.
You can take whatever significance you want out of that. It's a personal experience. But I went from 2008 until this year, and now suddenly this spring I've gotten several calls from different sources asking me the same question.
Aaron?
Seems to me that, I know we've had a little bit of a decline in school enrollment, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact with just the timing of the housing boom that happened in this town. It happened, in the 90s, and those kids have now aged out, right? We had a whole bunch of people, which was an oddball number, of 30-year-olds with 2-year-old kids suddenly move into this town and buy new construction houses.
Yeah.
That is going to level itself out over time, and if there's one thing we know about populations in general, they're not going down. So I would think that long-term, as we get out 15, 20 years from where we are right now, we'll at some point start to see another increase in school enrollment. I mean,
School-age populations
School age.
are going down. Population in the world may not be going down, but school age is going down. And as I probably said here before, I'll tell you, from where I live, it doesn't change. 2,400 less kids in my town than there was when I grew up, because everyone moved in our town in the 50s and 60s, had 7, 8 kids back then, and now people have 1 or 2. So when one of those houses turns over, a house that had 7 kids in it has 1 or 2. So you don't see it, it just doesn't.
It's just not Norton. It's all the towns around
My
us.
son graduated from high school with 42 kids in his class. My wife had 250. Never changed back again. They just built one school for K to 12.
I guess the last question. Has the town or the school system kind of evaluated each school to their quote-unquote useful life and as they stand now, and what they'd be if we did this?
I would imagine that their consultant did that. I know like the Salmonese, the roof was put on not too long ago, so that is a new roof. We know the middle school, well, that's not in this, but they need a roof. The LG North's just tied into the sewerage. They may have a problem with the septic system at the Salmonese, but
I think.
I think otherwise, I think their engineer that's done the study would have looked at.
But
I mean, they'll always, just because you do windows doesn't mean you're not going to have to do.
right, but most buildings have a useful life,
Yeah.
Right.
and so
That's, yeah, I don't know. I would have to ask them that.
Then the Yale school should be gone.
Yeah, it should be bulldozed for sure. I mean, I guess my question is, have we done the analysis? Are we going to spend $8 million on new windows for 3 schools when we could build a brand new school for $30 million and then not have any of these ongoing maintenance
But remember, it's
issues?
It's $4 million will be committed.
Right, but the overall cost of the project, it becomes a cost benefit that we shouldn't ignore.
When I moved into this town, we were the only town in southeastern Massachusetts where all the schools had been built since World War II. In fact, there are more towns still that are using schools that were built before World War II than Norton. All of our schools that we use are post-World War II. So we talk about the Yale School being ancient in terms of the kinds of schools that other places are using, including Attleboro and others, not so ancient.
Yeah.
And the back part of it, of course, the one-story part of the Yale School is newer than that. It's considerably newer than that. But even the front of the Yale School was built in the post-World War II period.
Yeah, some of those
All of
schools
it,
are
that
probably
doesn't mean
better
to say
than
it
the
may
one.
not be out of date or,
Probably better built.
and I think it may have been better built than some later ones. I have a more optimistic or pessimistic, whichever way you want to look at it, point of view. I think that Norton is on the verge of another building boom. And if we get a little more industrial park in here and other things, and there are others going around here in this area, there's still a lot of open real estate. I I would be willing to bet if we stopped using one of those schools, that within the next 15 years, we'd be back posting a bond issue to build a new school. Now, maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, but that's what I think would happen. If we gave up one school, I think we'd quickly find ourselves back needing a school. We have other uses for the school now, it's being used. We get revenue from the program for the deaf that is in there. I think my own feeling is we're better off holding on to it, because I think the L School is an old style building, but it's in very good shape. But we're getting way beyond,
Right,
way beyond,
okay. Well,
I'm still going with.
Okay,
why
I'll
don't you
get that
get that
information.
information, and we can,
And the building committee voted to recommend the project.
they did, okay. And I think our next meeting will be?
Wednesday, the 9th?
Yep, okay. All right. And then Article 26, Mike, is still waiting for the school.
They meet on the 7th, so.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And I think Bob,
That it?
yeah, I think Bob,
Yeah, I think Bob Kimball's here tonight. He wants to come before us for a couple minutes of his time.
Couple minutes, yeah.
Come on.
Here, Bob.
back in a couple minutes.
All right. He's got a,
The only guy I know who talks more than I do.
all right.
Who's getting your time?
I guess.
I'm sure he has
This is for a good reason, just so you know.
Nay, very good reason.
And we're going to indulge you folks tonight because we think it's very important that you guys be a part of this information that we're going to expand. And after much extended surveys, we decided that we're going to ignore the surveys and do what we want to do anyway. It is my pleasure this year to dedicate the town report to Mr. Tom DeLuca. And I'd like you to come up here, please.
Yay.
So, for those of you who don't know Tom's story, which I didn't know,
I'm about to hear it.
This is your life.
by the way, we have some invited guests coming here also.
So nice.
Mike, would you
It
pass
was
out?
Kathy's idea.
Yeah, I'll say. You guys are going to see the most handsome Marine I've ever seen at the age of what, 17? 17 years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, as much as we think we know Tom, we honestly don't know Tom. I know I don't. I've known him for 20 years at least. Folks, come on up here. Come on up and join us. So I'm going to read his bio that I believe his daughter gave us. Thomas Tom DeLuca was born on September 29, 1939 to Dominic Thomas DeLuca. That's Italian, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. And Teresa Marie Delia DeLuca in Corona, New York. Tom lived in New York during his childhood and won a beautiful baby contest.
I did. They had good
By the way-
cameras back then.
At a very young age, Tom played in a piano recital at Carnegie Hall.
Yes, I did.
You never knew that. His love for baseball started when he was young, and he was selected to be on the field at Brooklyn Dodgers game sponsored by the Brooklyn Dodgers Happy Feltons Knot Hole Gang.
Yep.
What the heck was that?
And Carl Ferrello picked me. Carl Ferrello was the Dodgers back. Paul probably remember the year, but the Dodgers used to have every night they would pick somebody from Brooklyn to go down and go on the field with the Dodgers, and then they would pick one player. There'd be 3 players out there. One player would get to come back the next day and sit in the dugout with the Dodgers and watch them play. This is when you had Jackie Robinson, Newcomb, all the old standards. So Carl Ferrello was the one who picked him. Being Italian, I was there with 2 other non-Italians, so I got picked. So I came back the next day.
He must be older than me. I don't remember any of those names. At the age of 17, Tom served in the United States Marine Corps during the Korean War, and Tom was an expert in Morse code. He met the love of his life, Teresa Camilla Lombardi, and they were married on April 18, 1959. They lived in Brooklyn for a short time before moving to Florida in 1960, where Tom worked at the Nassau Missile Test Center until 1967.
Sergeant Mercury.
It was in 1967 that Tom accepted a job at Raytheon Company in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and moved his family to Middletown, Rhode Island. He resided in Rockland, Massachusetts for a short time before moving his family to Norton in 1969. Tom continued his work for Raytheon for 14 years at various locations in Massachusetts. Tom also worked for the Foxborough Company for 5 years and retired in the early 1980s to work as a consultant assisting many local companies in quality control. In the early 1990s, Tom took his final job at the New England Temperature Solutions, where he is still working occasionally. Tom devotes much of his time to service to his community. He has served as a member of the Council on Aging and continues to support activities that enhance programming for local seniors. Tom is a member of the Finance Committee, a position he has held for more than 20 years. Tom is also a lifetime member of the Norton VFW, Post 8049, where he is very active, including fundraising activities and daily operations that help support VFW Post 8049. Tom is a fixture at Honor Guard at Memorial Day and Veterans Day parades. He's there every time. Tom is also a committee member of the Circle of Flags that was dedicated in 2016. Tom is a ham radio operator, loves softball and golf. Tom's greatest accomplishment was serving his country and enjoys spending time with his family. With his wife, Tom raised all 3 of his children in Norton. They all graduated from Norton High School. Tom loves spending time with his 7 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. He and his wife Teresa have been married for 59 years and have lived in Norton for almost 50 years. Tom, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, your family, your extended family, all of us, I'm proud to dedicate this town report to you, and it's well-deserved and long overdue. So thank you. I also found a Citizen Award pin that I'm going to give him also. But
Nice.
there you go.
Reminds me of an episode of This Is Your Life.
But he is an amazing man. You have to admit. I mean, the things that he's done is mind-boggling, and we're very happy that you decided not to live in all those other communities and finally did move to Norton. So,
Yeah, I
where
know.
you made your final home.
You
appreciate
missed one thing.
Yes, sir.
The one thing is that I will always remember, in addition to Tom, is Tom getting up at some point in frustration in town meeting and saying, "What part of no don't you understand?"
I think I've heard that before.
I'm sure the kids have heard that, yes.
Remember that well.
We know where it came from.
Yes, we do. Well, thank you for your indulgence. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
That's all, Paul. That's all I got to say tonight.
Very good.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great.
All right.
Wow, you had no idea?
Nice. Carol, too.
Wait till Tom gets back here.
Just great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Congratulations, Tom.
More deserving person.
Congratulations, Tom.
Congratulations. I love all these pictures.
Yeah.
Who was that young kid anyway?
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah. All right, great. All right, well, I think most of our business is done tonight. Just one little housekeeping. We could just reread our, the changes that we made for the final finance annual report.
Fine.
Okay. Okay.
Looks good.
Yeah, I-
We just checked the assessment numbers,
Yeah,
and
I think
and that's all we did, was verify it.
well done.
Yeah, I mean, that was the
Yeah,
only
that
thing that
was-
had to be checked.
Yeah.
The only thing I noticed on that is it could use a colon.
The grammar police have arrived.
Oh, where are you?
Sorry.
Where are you? What paragraph?
Yeah, where was it?
Paragraph 3,
Thank you, go ahead,
Two.
Dean.
halfway through.
Make one if the rest of
After the line says one of 2 ways, colon,
Or dash.
Does not keep pace with expenses. Recognize that when revenue does not keep pace with
Yeah.
expenses, the imbalance can be rectified in one of 2 ways.
Okay.
Colon.
Colon.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Agreed. Won't argue.
Nitpicky, but
Should have got a semicolon?
no, a semicolon adds 2
Probably
complete
should-
sentences
It
into
should be,
one.
it should be a colon.
Okay.
Colon, yes.
What do I know?
All right. Well, it's,
No one's supposed to know all this stuff.
Sharon,
yes, Mike.
move we adjourn the meeting?
Now you're pushing your luck.
Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah, let's
sorry.
accept this and vote
As amended?
as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Very nice job.
So who am I sending it to?
You can send me, we'll forward it to Michelle,
Michelle,
and Michelle really is the,
she sticks in
Yeah.
front of our
yeah,
report.
right, that'll be on May 14th. With that, we need
So
to adjourn?
One other thing.
Yes.
Is it an act of, a higher power to get the website fixed?
Yes, I've requested that, and I hope to have that done shortly. I've done that. I've requested it, so we'll see.
What part of it is broken? I don't go in there because there's
Um,
nothing there.
There are people there that have passed who haven't been on here for a while.
Oh, really?
There are new people who aren't on there.
The last time I went on there,
There's some
the
people
last
that-
agenda or the
Yeah.
last minutes that were posted had been from like 2011.
Yeah,
So was like, oh.
I have requested that get changed, so.
The
Okay.
agendas, I think, are up to date, because that's where I got the counts
Okay.
for last fall. So those are there.
Yeah, I know
It'd be a
that, I know
great
they're
place to
working
post,
on it,
like the
so.
links to the meeting videos, things like
Well,
that.
that's even a
Like-
higher power.
I know,
That's a
like
web-
the handout, like electronic copies of the budget, things
Yeah,
like that would
okay.
be amazing to put there.
All right.
Chairman,
Yes, Mike,
now I move we adjourn the meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.